You saw the title. Wait, where am I? Much better. I'll be attempting to beat PvZ Fusion's main adventure without fusing any of my plants. So let's quickly go over what qualifies as a fusion. Obviously, placing two plants together is fusing them, but upgrade plants such as Tall Nut and Gloom Shroom are fine. The game also introduces a fair amount of completely new plants, and those are also fair game. Multiple individual plants on the same tile don't count as fusions either, with stuff like Lily Pad, Pumpkin Shell, or 3 Puff Shrooms on one space. The game also gives me a few fusions for free at the start of levels every once in a while, and because I'm not the one making them, I'm allowed to use them. With that out of the way, let's get started. As you might expect, the first level was super easy. I'll mention the game does force you to fuse a pea shooter and a sunflower as part of the tutorial, as well as 4 pea shooters to create a Gatling pea, but in order to not kill the challenge before it really starts, I just dug up the fusions right after I made them. The level is also super easy to cheese, as no zombies spawned while the game waited for me to make the tutorial fusions, so I just set up a massive defense during the grace period. This level is a prelude for what will be coming up. The game's difficulty curve is reliant on the often broken fused plants you unlock as you progress, with some of the special zombies pretty much requiring certain plant combos to defeat. Level 1 threw a lot of zombies at me, as is expected from a level that assumes I'll be spamming Gatling peas right out of the gate. I'm expecting the challenge to get much harder. Level 2 is pretty simple, as it's still the tutorial period of the game. There wasn't much to say about it other than the fact that I like using Cherry Bomb to clear out entire waves at once. In order to not waste everyone's time, I'll be skipping over all of the uninteresting levels, and only talk about the highlights. If you want, I can upload a marathon of all the levels on the channel. Let me know by liking the video, or subscribing if you're new. In level 4, I accidentally messed up at the end by fusing 2 walnuts together thinking I'd heal it, so it created a giant nut that bowled over everything in the lane. Well, that was pretty stupid of me, so I had to redo the level. Yay! Things got interesting when I unlocked the mystery gift. When placed, it generates a random plant, including ones you haven't unlocked yet. Being able to summon one of the many plants available outside of the World 1 ones is super useful. While it's not perfectly reliable as it's equally likely to give you garbage, its pros outweigh the cons, and it will be a must include going forward. At least until I can establish a proper setup when my arsenal expands. This level also introduces the Cherry Newspaper Zombie. And this guy is a complete pain. And what's so different about him, you might ask? Yeah, he's one of those guys that practically requires a specific fusion to thwart him. And if you don't have that one specific answer, your entire defense is toast. And of course, that plant is a fusion that I cannot use. So the method of beating this level was through tutorial setup cheese, although this time with the mystery gift. I was able to spawn in a ton of Salmi-Knots, a new plant added to the game that's a melee powerhouse, and a column of Ampneons. They sort of act like Lightning Reed, and get more powerful the more of them you have nearby. Those were enough to deal with the bulk of the onslaught, while I brute forced the Cherry Newspapers by shoving a Cherry Bomb or Potato Mine into them as soon as they spawned. Level 9 threw everything at me. While there was no zombie in particular that gave me trouble, it was just that the waves showed up too quickly and in too big of numbers for my non-fused plants to keep up with. This level took me over an hour to beat, but eventually I was able to power through by investing in as much defense and stall as possible before setting up the Chompers to wipe out the absurdly bulky Diamond Head zombies. It was tricky to manage the cherry bombs to incinerate all of the weak zombies and save the chompers for the strong ones that survived the blast, but I eventually managed it. Considering that I'm having this much trouble and I'm not even a quarter way through of the challenge is worrisome. Now I've reached the nighttime levels. Unfortunately, Sunshroom has been changed to being a fusion between Puff Shroom and Sunflower, so I won't be able to use it. I was still able to spam Puff Shrooms all the same, and beat the level pretty easily. And to be honest, World 2 wasn't that big of a deal. Huh! Who even needs fusions in this game if it's gonna be this easy? Not even the Michael Jackson pole vaulting squad. I just realized how odd that sounds out loud. Could make a dent in my defense. If I can handle him, as well as the Cherry Newspaper zombies, I might as well be unstoppable. I don't think I broke a sweat in any of these night levels. roll the montage. World 3? It started pretty easy like World 2, but at the end of the day it was still manageable. The vehicle spam towards the end started to get a little scary, but let's just say that Chomper isn't too picky about how his zombies are served.
Get in my belly!
Overall, while certainly a step up in difficulty from the night levels, it wasn't too hard. At this rate, I'll be done in no time. Wait, what's this? A conveyor belt level? They didn't have any of those for the first 2 worlds. And also, it's insanely hard! Here's a little tidbit for you about the pool levels. Lilypad has its own fusions, though they're limited with the other plants from World 3 and Sunflower. For the majority of the levels here, that's no problem, as it's easy for me to just use any other plant on top of the Lilypads instead, but this conveyor belt level gives you almost exclusively World 3 plants, which means that I can't put 3-peaters, squashes, torchwoods, or jalapenos in those lanes, so I'm losing out on a ton of firepower. And in the water lanes, there's an unholy trilogy of enemies they send there. Snorkel zombies, dolphin rider zombies, and dolphin sub-zombies. Snorkels will only be vulnerable while they're eating something, which the level offers walnuts which don't fuse with the lily pads, thankfully. Dolphin riders will move at super fast speeds until they reach a plant and then jump over them, so you have to either plant additional defensive layers or upgrade your walnuts into tall nuts to block them. And then there's the dolphin sub. It will plow through the lane and instantly crush all plants it comes across. So this fun little combo has the sub crush all your wall plants, clearing the path for dolphin riders and snorkels to cover a lot of ground while you have to rebuild your defense. And did I mention that the subs have 1,300 health each? Yeah, the 3-peaters might be able to destroy 1, but it's always after they've progressed just far enough to tear apart your walnuts in the front. And that's not even mentioning when they send multiple stacked on top of each other. The only way to safely get rid of them is with Tangle Kelp, and even that's not reliable, as 90% of the time you attempt to ensnare a sub, it ends up grabbing some random other zombie on the same space as it, wasting the plant. I went through attempt after attempt, each with no luck. Was this the game's way of giving me karma for calling the challenge easy? There's no way I was going to lose to this. I was barely halfway done with the adventure and I got stuck already? But then, several hours and a lot of screaming later, I had a plan. Strategy I landed on was to place the Tangle Kelps towards the back of the lawn and then use the glove tool to place it directly on top of a sub whenever one appears, while stacking up walnuts at the front to sponge all the others. At the very least, I had to isolate the sub so I could either kelp them or have the 3-peaters clean up, and by some miracle, it worked. Now that hurdle was cleared, in came the fog levels. And to be honest, these weren't too bad. That, or I was just desensitized to the difficulty after the trauma level 27 put me through. Jack-in-the-box zombies were pretty annoying at times, and balloon zombies could be dangerous if unprepared, but it was manageable. Also, you can cheese the fog levels by turning on zombie health bars so you can see where the zombies are at all times, even through the fog. I also learned that Doom Shroom doesn't make a crater when placed on a lily pad, which made these levels even more of a joke. Not to mention that towards the end they gave me the hammer, an item that's really powerful, and I often forgot to use it. I was slightly concerned about level 36 as it was another conveyor belt level, but it wasn't nearly as hard as the previous one, mostly because I didn't have to worry about lily pad fusions. If they had only given me Sea Shroom and its fusions to work with in the water, it would have been a lot tougher. Though I did lose some lawnmowers early on because they sent bucknut copter zombies almost instantly and I had no answers. And I forgot to use the mallet. Okay, now we're in the home stretch, the roof levels. And there's a really big problem. Flower pots. Like Lilypad, they also have fusions. That means I can't use Cabbage Pult, Kernel Pult, Umbrella Leaf, or even Sunflower. How am I ever gonna get past this? Without sunflowers, any hope of building a large enough defense was out the window. But I couldn't just not use sunflowers this whole time. I had to do something, and my answer to that was the bad present. When placed, it gives you 100 sun and spawns a mystery box zombie that transforms into another random zombie when you destroy its armor. A little trick you can do to bypass that though is to have it get eaten by a Chomper. So, I set up the Chomper at the back of the lawn with its sole purpose being to instantly devour the zombies summoned from the bad present, giving me 100 sun each time. While still way worse than simply having an army of sunflowers, it was all I could do. All that, and I still didn't have a concrete way to fight the zombies. Since I couldn't use catapults, I needed something that could shoot short range. And for that, I had Puff Shroom. You can use the mushrooms during the day here, although they each cost 75 extra sun to accommodate for the implied use of coffee bean to wake them up. Puff Shroom was exactly what I was looking for. It was slightly cheaper than Pea Shooter, its limited range doesn't matter too much since I needed to place them up close anyways, you could stack up to 3 of them in the same tile so you can maximize their space, and the zombies needed to eat each one individually so I can stall with them better. And even with all of those upsides, the level was still super difficult. And it only had brown coats and cone heads! As I suspected, the main issue came from having a lack of sun to do anything. It took me a couple tries, mostly when I got unlucky with multiple cone heads spawning in the same lane, or if I accidentally made a blunder with a plant placement. The ending was so messy that I had to stall until the final wave for the lawnmowers to clean it up for me. And this is the first level! There's no way I'll be able to keep up with this Puff Shroom strategy, especially as they introduce more special zombies. The next level was all about mystery gift spam. I was able to get some decent plants for this level, and I was able to barely scrape by again. The same goes for level 39 where... Wait, did I just get a cabbage pult from that gift? And it didn't fuse with the flower pot? Hold on, I have to check this.
One eternity later.
No way. You're saying that the entire time you were able to manually fuse the pots? Well, that would have been nice to know for the last 3 levels. With that valuable knowledge, level 40 was a breath of fresh air. As it turns out, actually having access to the plants that the world intends for you to use makes it a lot easier. With that one cleared, only 5 levels remain from the main adventure, but only 3 of them were a real challenge. The first one on the list is level 41. Say hello to the Mecha Nut Zombie. I may have said that the cherry newspaper was hard to deal with, but this guy is something else entirely. Their main gimmick is that they act like walnut bowling on the zombie side, rolling into your defense, ricocheting off of your plants and destroying them, before making it to the end and triggering a lawnmower where there are usually no zombies in that lane to get any value from. Sure, you could stop them from advancing with Umbrella Leaf, but the rolling phase is only half of the battle. When they're destroyed, they explode into either a giant fireball or ice ball, which also rolls down the lane and destroys all your plants, in addition to a barrage of imps. In order to stop the elemental ball, you need to either plant a jalapeno or ice shroom once it spawns. And the best part? That's only to deal with one Mecha Nut. The game loves to throw multiple of them at you, one after the other, usually right after you spend the instar required to deal with it. This level was horrendous, even with access to catapults and sunflowers. So, I knew that something had to change. The sheer enemy spam and constant Mecha Nut barrages were proving to be too much, and I was running on fumes. And that's when it hit me. Fume Shroom. It had the perfect capabilities to deal with large groups of enemies, which made it way easier to isolate the Mecha Nuts and focus on them instead. It took me about 5 tries, but I was able to pull through and beat the level. The next of the big 3 was level 43. This is where the Gargantuars come into play. Brute forcing it with the catapults did not work whatsoever. The Gargantuar spawned in too great of numbers and in too large of clusters for my cabbage pults to make a dent in them, and Melon Pult's lack of significant AoE sealed the deal. So I returned to Fume Shrooms, although this time with a twist. Here, I started to use the
Gloom Grinder.
It's a pretty popular strategy in the base game, where you set up lanes 2 and 4 with a giant line of gloom shrooms and garlics in the front to divert the zombies into the other lanes where they get completely melted. You might be...
That voice crack was horrendous.
You might be asking, but Twilight, wouldn't the Gargs just crush the garlic and ruin your strategy? And the answer to that is yes! That would usually be a huge problem, but this game has 2 useful items, the mallet and the zombie glove. The glove can allow you to reposition any zombie on the lawn, so that usually means any Gargantuars that spawn in the Gloomshroom lanes. It gets a little complicated when multiple spawn at once, but that's where the mallet comes in. That one simply obliterates every zombie in a small area around where you clicked. So if only one Garg appears, I use the glove. If multiple do, then I bonk them to death. Don't get me wrong, this strategy wasn't flawless as I needed some half-decent luck for the game to not continuously spawn Gargantuars in the wrong lanes, but after a couple tries, I was able to clear this level as well. And that leaves the last big level, level 44. This one was brutal! The other levels, while hard in their own right, had a gimmick to them. Level 41 was Mecha Nuts and Catapults, and 43 was Gargantuars. Both of those could be thwarted by their own unique strategies. But when put together, you have the abomination that is level 44. Not only does it have everything from the previous hard levels, but it also introduces two new zombies, the Cherry Catapult zombie and the Mecha Gargantuar zombie. Because of this, the Gloom Grinder was no longer an option. The Cherry Catapults can blow up my defense from the back as well as destroy umbrella leaves. And Mecha Gargs were a lot harder to stall as they don't stop for a second to crush plants. He just walks right through them. This is also the level that introduces me to Cob Cannon, so I can assure you that I wanted to use it as much as possible here. So for this, I tried to set up a ton of cannons all protected by umbrella leaves and unleash Cornmageddon onto the zombies whenever they spawned. And it worked. Until it didn't. Every time. The defense looked like it was holding strong, then the dominoes collapsed all at once and the zombies could push through. It usually started when a Cherry Catapult zombie could break its way through an umbrella leaf, and then a single stray bullet could blow up multiple Cob Cannons at once and ruin the entire setup. So I had to constantly keep watch over the health of my umbrella leaves while also manually firing the Cob Cannons to ensure the most damage gets done. You thought level 27 was hard? Or even level 43? Or how about the roof levels where I didn't even use Sunflower? They were nothing compared to this. Most of the time, the mystery gift didn't even do anything because at this point, I'd unlocked most of the plants and the zombies had also approached that power level. But on my final run, as I was on the verge of giving up, luck smiled on me. I was given 3 zombie knots from the mystery gift, which on their own could defeat any non-Gargantuar zombie that gets too close to them. Placing them in the middle lanes, it was enough to keep my Cob Cannons safe from the majority of the onslaught, and it could allow me to focus the Cob Cannons on the big threats. And after so many tries, I stopped counting. It was done. Yes! Finally! Oh! You know, after that, level 45 was a bit of an anticlimax. So that was done in a breeze, and that was it. The entirety of PvZ Fusion's adventure cleared without fusing a single one of my plants. While the majority of the challenge was really from only a handful of levels, it was really fun. If you want, I can do a follow-up to this with stuff like the snow levels, and I'll cry if you ask me to complete Odyssey mode without fusing. So with that, thank you so much for watching, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you later!